Welcome to the webinar, Misophonia as a two-step reaction to triggers. And I'm Tom Dozier. I have a Master's of Science in Behavior Analysis and the Family, which is a science of both behavior that functions, that works for us, as well as reflexes. And I'm going to be presenting this webinar today. I want to first talk a little bit about the popular view of misophonia. What is it with misophonia? What's a hallmark of misophonia? What do we define it as? And misophonia is where you hear a trigger stimulus or see it. There's a trigger stimulus, and it causes a reaction that starts with irritation or disgust, and it immediately escalates into extreme emotions of hatred, rage, anger, extreme disgust. And the trigger stimuli are generally commonly occurring soft sounds, but also visual stimuli. So it's our usual mouth sounds, nasal sounds, but really any repeating sound can be a misophonic trigger. And it also includes visual triggers such as motion associated with the sound or repetitive motion such as hair twirling. So that's the popular view of misophonia. And if you look at that, because it's an instantaneous reaction of extreme emotions, you hear the trigger, you have these extreme emotions, and it's involuntary. So because it's an involuntary response, it's automatic, it's a reflex response. That's the basic definition of a reflex, is there's a stimulus and then there's some kind of response. Any kind of response would be, if it's automatic and it happens without you deciding to do it, and if you say, I don't want to do that, and it still happens, that is a reflex. And that's what we see with misophonia. You have a trigger, extreme emotions. So along with the emotions, there are physical accompanying characteristics in your body, okay? The person who's triggered for a while will start having an increased heart rate. They may be sweating, tense muscles all over, fight or flight, desire to get the heck out of there, feelings of anxiety and distress. All of those feelings come from the extreme emotions. So you hear a trigger, see a trigger, and boom, you have this emotional response. Now that's the way that you experience misophonia. And I acknowledge that that is what you experience, but there is something else going on here. That's a one-step process, and what I see from working with now over 200 people is that you have a trigger, and that trigger elicits, it jerks out of you. That's the term for what a stimulus does to a reflex. It elicits, it jerks it out of you. It jerks this physical reflex. And the physical reflex is why you feel a trigger. If you hear a sound, it's just, oh, that's a sound. But with a misophonic trigger, it's like, oh, I don't like that. Oh, I hate that. Stop that. And there's some visceral physical feeling. And that physical reflex, I propose, actually jerks the extreme emotion and the fight or flight out of you. And I've seen some connection direct between the trigger and the extreme emotion, but that's secondary. That seems to develop in people who've experienced misophonia longer and in more severe situations. So if we now look at this, I want to talk about the physical reflex of misophonia. And I hope to convince you before this video is over, that this is actually occurring. Yeah, maybe not. Be open-minded. Okay, so let's go back to this. The physical reflex of misophonia. 95%, more than 95% can identify a specific physical reflex, or that something's happening, but they can't put their finger on it. I've had 4 cases that were very clear to me of people who no physical reflex, no matter how hard we worked, no physical reflex. And one of those is quite highly outspoken on the misophonia management and treatment group. And 3 of those 4 since then I have worked with, and we found a physical reflex. So there's something that jerks, that tweaks. It's often a muscle jerk, right, or a hand clench. But I've seen it in, as I've listed here on the screen: neck, shoulders, jaw, chest, face, hands shut, hands open, in the abdomen, all parts of the legs, their butt, their feet, their, behind the vessels behind the ears, gasp for breath. I have a relative who feels their calves clench, and I've worked with a couple of people whose toes curl when they get triggered. I've also had people with internal reflexes. One of the toughest one is a stomach or an intestine constriction, but also nausea, butterflies, esophagus constriction, feeling like you're being choked inside, sexual arousal, and an urge to urinate. And some of them just say, there's something in my chest cavity. So these reflexes occur, and they occur because of the autonomic nervous system. Let's see if I can get my little pen going here where I can actually highlight things. There we go. So it's this autonomic nervous system. Maybe it won't do it right. There we go. How about this? Well, okay. All attendees, how about if we do it this way? Does that show up on the screen? Nope. I thought that would, oh, here, how about this one? There we go. Your autonomic nervous system, this little guy right here, is in the swelling of the spinal cord and the brain stem, and that's the autonomic nervous system, and that's where your automatic reflexes occurs. That's where blinking and all of your internal processes for digestion and sweating, startle reflex, all of those automatic reflexes occur in this autonomic nervous system. I call it your lizard brain. It doesn't think, although lizards do think, but it just reacts. It's just a reflex. Now we have the limbic system, that's our emotional brain up here, and we have our thinking brain, our thoughtful processes up in the top in our cerebrum. So what I'm saying is that there is a physical reflex which would make it from the autonomic nervous system here, your lizard brain, that when you sense a trigger, something happens, you feel it. And let's look at that a little bit more here. So as I was just saying, that trigger stimulus jerks out of you through your lizard brain, a physical reflex. And that physical reflex actually jerks your body. And that is people are not supposed to be able to violate your personal space. They're not supposed to be able to reach out there and poke you with the sound that they make. And that poke is an uncomfortable stimulus, and that is going to jerk out of you your emotional response, and that's based on your emotional brain and your limbic system. So let's talk about how to find your physical reflex. Let's see, I don't have a poll set up. Maybe some of you can say later if you actually know your physical reflex. Check chat. I have a note here. Let's see what our chat box says. Okay, so determining your physical reflex in the chat box. Why don't you go ahead and type in if you think you know your physical reflex. Okay, a shoulder twitch very likely could be a very good possibility. I don't have any idea, but I'd love to find out. Great answer. Okay, as Mark Twain once said, I was proud I could answer quickly. I said, I didn't know. So that's a great answer too. Okay, well anyway, we'll move on here. So the way to do this, you got something? Okay. So the way to do this is you want to have a trigger that is small enough that it doesn't blow you away. Because what happens now is that with a trigger, you may have that jerk, but it creates such an enormous emotional upheaval that it's so powerful that you can't tell what happened. So what you want is a single occurrence, soft, short trigger, like a tiny little sniff. And if it's in real life, that may be too much. Although usually I found I can do pretty good with the real life triggers, but if trying to do that with somebody is too much, get away from it, move away, because the quieter the trigger is, the smaller the physical reflex that it will jerk out of you. The other option is to use a recorded trigger, something that's maybe a quarter second long and barely audible. And again, the goal here is to get it very soft. Now, I have had an app created called the Misophonia Reflex Finder app. I used to charge $1 for this, but I just turned it over to free. So, okay, guys, this is a free app. If you want to try it, whoops, free app, pin, highlight. Can I do this? There we go. It's free. And what the app allows you to do is it allows you to record a trigger, edit the trigger, and then play it back with a very precise volume. So it has some instructions here. You press the reflex test button here on the home page. It will open up this page here, and it has any of the files that you have as recorded triggers. It comes with a few built-in, some songs that were left over from the trigger tamer that I guess I didn't have removed. But you can hit the record button here. It will open up this screen, which allows you to press record the trigger, hit stop, give it a name, and then hit the back button, and you will see it showing up on the list of triggers here. Now, most of the time, a lot of times when you record a trigger, there's going to be silence at the first. You're turning the recorder on, you're going to make the trigger. And so if you if you highlight a particular file, it'll turn gray. And then you can press the edit button, and that will open up this screen over here, which is the trigger editor, which will allow you to trim off the leading silence and junk to the trigger you want. If it's just silence, you can hit auto start, and it will take the silence. iPhone only. Android, that doesn't work right. And then you can either save it under its old name, or you can give it a new name and save it, and go back to, and done is a save and quit, and back is just a quit.
What was the
Okay.
top one now?
Okay, I have a note from my helper here, and was just distracted there. So anyway, that takes you back to the reflex finder. You can highlight the one that you want, and then you can press, go to another button here. So you can press the plus button and the minus on the volume until you get the volume you want. You can shorten or lengthen the trigger as you wish and play it. And then when you want to play it, hit this button here, and it will play over. Every time you hit the button, it will play one time. And your goal is to start with a short enough, quiet enough sound so that it doesn't trigger you. Right? And then at that point, you can slowly raise it up until you feel something, right? Until you feel it. And whatever you feel at that point is your initial reflex. And usually it's not like all my muscles. Right? I don't know anyone where it's all my muscles. I've seen people where it's like my chest and my shoulders and my back. It's one man, it was a head jerk. So it was like jerk and his right arm. And if he had heard the trigger on his right, it was a jerk to the right and the right arm. If he heard the trigger on his left, it was a jerk to the right and right arm. That was his reflex, just like that. He was a veteran. It came from his misophonia developed in a combat situation in Afghanistan. Okay, so again, determining your physical reflex. Get that weak trigger, short and soft. Don't get it soft enough that it doesn't trigger you, and then increase the trigger slowly, saying, did you feel that? And if they ask, where did you feel it? Once again, it's usually a muscle. Usually the triggers are muscles, but it may also be something that you can't describe. I've had someone say, well, I feel something in my chest, something's growing in my chest. But I have never seen it to be increased heart rate, sweating, or general muscle tension. Never have I seen it there. Now, there's one I want to mention here, which is pain in the ears. There is something that happens with, I think it's called your, the temporal or tympani muscle, something like that. I don't know the detail, but it jerks the muscle in your ear because your brain is perceiving it as an extremely loud sound. So it's jerking that muscle in your ear. That is in addition to usually in some sort of a muscle reflex. I've also never seen the pain in the ear to be the only initial physical reflex. Okay, so benefits of knowing your reflex. Let's see, let's cover this first. You can understand that with misophonia, it is not another person hurting you, it's your lizard brain attacking you. I use the analogy of the little lizard brain, it's biting you, right? It's a reflex. It's not the end of the world. It's uncomfortable, it's horrible, it's a violation of your personal space. I don't mean to minimize it, but it is a reflex. And if you can break the chain, then it will reduce your misophonia. So the chain with the components looks like this. You have the trigger stimulus, which jerks the physical reflex, which jerks the extreme emotions. Now, those extreme emotions, anytime you're really upset, there's a mental part of being upset, and there is a physical part of being upset. So I am angry, my muscles are tense. I am being very upset and feeling rage, and my heart rate is going up, and I'm sweating, and my stress hormones are going up. There's all kinds of physical things happening that are a direct result of these extreme emotions. You get this stress response. And then these guys cause your coping behaviors. And this is where you're actually doing something, blocking off your ears because you don't want to hear it, pushing somebody away from you, leaving the room, but you're doing something to cut down to stop the trigger, to stop the pain. There's a little bit of control you can do with this, but it's a whole lot easier. It's a whole lot easier if you just break this connection here between the trigger and the physical reflex, or if you break this one between the physical reflex and the extreme emotions. Now, there are some of these other paths that develop, but they are secondary as far as I've been able to tell. So at this point, before I go on with this, I'm just going to back up to this and say, is there anybody who would like to test right now to see if you can figure out what your physical reflex is? You can either send it, let's see, there's a button to raise your hand. There is also you can send me a question through Q&A, or you can make a chat statement. But would anybody like to test it? And we're going to probably have to ask some tolerance through you folks that are going to trigger to this once we decide what it is. But I'll need you to talk to me. I'll turn on your microphone if you would like, and we can give it a shot. Anybody brave enough or want to try this? Or is there anyone here who has tried any of this? Let's see if there's people that I recognize who would like to speak to about their physical reflex. I think I recognize maybe one name that I've had a little bit of contact with. But okay, we've got a chat box coming up here. Okay, you would like to test it. Okay. That may be from before. Mic's not working. Okay. Sorry about that, Linda. And Q&A says, sure, I'll try. Okay. I'm not knitting. Oh, you're not. Okay. So let's see. You know what? I don't see. Okay, I'm going to look at this. In my list of attendees, I see names, not email addresses. So I'm having trouble with this. Let's see if I can find the attendees. And do I have a name for I'm not knitting? Oh, I can see if I can turn, I'm not knitting. I'm going to see if I can turn your microphone on, unmute you. Are you there?
I am.
Awesome. Okay. So I guess if you're talking, you're not knitting, right?
I'm not knitting, and that's because I crochet.
Okay. That's awesome. Great. Okay. What is there something that I could do to trigger you?
Oh, well, goodness gracious, I'm sure there is.
I mean, tell me, because some people have said, no, there's nothing you can do to trigger me. I only trigger by, my husband.
Well, you could probably chomp a chip.
Okay.
Or you could pop some gum.
Oh, I don't want to kill anyone on this.
I know. I don't want anybody to leave your awesome seminar. So,
let me ask you a question. Let me pick up. If you trigger to chips, do you trigger to bag crunching?
Repetitive.
It has to be.
Yeah, it has to be repetitive, and it has to be not predictable, if that makes any sense. Like if it was repetitive, like on a beat, that would be fine. But if I don't know it's coming, that's the worst.
Okay. And you don't trigger to sniffing, right?
Oh, I can trigger to sniffing.
I think
I can make that happen.
I think sniffing will be less offensive here. I'm going to get this sign here. Okay, so for those of you who don't want to trigger to this, I'm going to put my little sniffing tag here. Okay, so as long as I'm wearing this tag that says sniffing, I'll take it down when I stop sniffing, and it's safe to come back. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to give you a tiny sniff. I want you to just are you seated?
I am.
Is it a comfortable chair, or can you lay down?
I'm on the floor, so I can just lay down on the floor. Is laying down better?
Just get as relaxed as you can.
Okay.
Okay. Now, my goal here, remember, is to try to give you a trigger that's so small that it doesn't trigger you. Okay? So,
okay.
Here we go. Did you hear that?
I did not.
Oh, hey, I succeeded. Here we go. Here we go again. Did you hear that?
Slightly.
Did you trigger at all?
No.
Okay, here we go again. Did you feel anything?
Nope.
Okay, here we go again. Big sniffing now. Trigger?
Nope.
Okay. That trigger you?
Yep.
Okay. I'm sorry, but
no, that's all right.
Did you feel anything? What did you feel?
I didn't really feel anything. I blinked really hard.
Okay.
I don't know if that makes any sense. Like my eyes blinked really, really hard.
Do you know that that's a muscle jerk, isn't it?
Yes.
That blinking, right, may be your physical.
My lizard brain.
That may be your lizard brain reflex. Try something here. Were your eyes open or closed when I sniffed that way?
Open.
Okay, and you went like that, right? Just instant blink. You think?
It was longer than that, and it was like I scrunched my eyes.
Okay, so let's try it one more time. I'll try to go with a smaller sniff. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Leave your eyes open. Relax. What did you feel?
Nothing.
Nothing. Didn't trigger you, right?
No.
Okay, here we go again. Okay, everybody, sniffing time. Nothing or trigger?
It's so hard to explain. I know you get it. I didn't blink, but I felt like a little pounding in my head or something.
Okay.
I don't know how you know what I mean?
Yeah, probably not your physical reflex typically in the head. I have had people with muscles behind their ears. Okay, so let's try one other thing. Who is the sniffer in your life that is your worst sniffer?
My neighbor that sits next to me at work.
Okay, man or a woman?
Woman.
Okay, close your eyes. Imagine you're at work. Here we go. What did you trigger?
I didn't.
Okay, we're gonna try it one more time and then we'll go to the chip. Okay, ready? Relax. Think of work. Think of that neighbor. Think of your desk. You're looking at your terminal, your papers, or whatever. What'd you feel?
My eyes blinked.
Okay.
Really hard.
Okay, so that's your physical reflex.
Yeah.
Now, that you could ask yourself the question, why would that little blink cause such extreme emotions? Unless you don't, maybe you have misophonia and you don't have extreme emotions.
Oh, I have extreme emotions.
Okay, so why would that little muscle jerk cause such extreme emotions? Well, it's paired with a lot of other things in your life. So there's other things happening. The other thing I think that happens is you don't expect people to poke you in the eyes.
Right.
And you can have a conversation with one person and totally block out the other person, right?
Yes.
You're just listening to that one person. But when your lizard brain hears the trigger, it's poking you. It is a physical, it's thumping you on the ear. And you're not supposed to let people thump you on the ear or poke you in the eye. And so that's what I see is this physical reflex is there that jerks your attention in when you're totally working on your thoughtful auditory system of what you're paying attention to. But a trigger can occur out of left field, right? And it'll jerk you on it.
Yep.
Grabs you. So I think that's that physical jerk. So, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think it makes sense.
Thank you. I have seen it over and over and over again to the point that this is a very predictable occurrence. Now, if you can turn your lizard brain off, that would be great, right? You stop that blinking, you would stop. I've seen patients which stop the misophonia because they don't have that physical jerk, and it's a physical jerk that, once again, causes the emotions to happen. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and mute you again. I'm not knitting, but thank you very much for doing this. Okay, do we have another person? Let's see. Let me look at the chat box. Okay, I got a typo going here with someone that's funny, right? So someone said that I'm finding that my foot jerks, either the hell or the toe jerks up. So, oops, she didn't mean hell, she meant heel. Okay, so there you go, heel jerks up. And so that's a, that foot's there and all of a sudden, it does that. That would be somewhere up in your calf, I guess, is probably what does that, or in your shin. Okay, let's see what we have here. Okay, do we have another one on the Q&A? And Okay, this one said, I found my heel and toe jerk when you sniffed, even though I did not trigger too badly from you doing it. But I tried to imagine someone who snorts, and I can't stand it. So there we go. So that was, that was Linda, we'll say that. So thank you, Linda. So would anybody else like to try this? Or we will go on to what this can mean for us. Well, without another person jumping in, well, thank you again, especially to, I'm crocheting, I'm not knitting. So looking at this picture here, if we can block the connection between the physical reflex and the emotion, it really helps. If we can block or reduce this jerking of the physical reflex, it helps. These get better. So let me move on and cover this. So one of the things that you can do is that if you have a physical reflex that is something like the heel jerk, the calf, or the shoulders, or a hand clasp, then those muscles can be learned to be controlled through progressive muscle relaxation, practice. It's not a 1 day or a 1 week thing. It's months of doing daily progressive muscle relaxation exercise. By the way, that has a very good health benefits, reduces anxiety, has a lot of benefits. I talk about that on misophoniatreatment.com/PMR. So if you learn to control that muscle, then you can relax that muscle before, once again, I want to point this out, you want to relax the muscle before the triggers. This suggestion came from an individual who I met at the first Misophonia conference in Arizona, and he said, I do this to control my anger. I hear a trigger, I just relax all my muscles, and that controls the anger. He had been doing it for 30 years. At the second Misophonia conference, which was the first Misophonia Association conference, he announced that he no longer had misophonia. What happened? His reflex was shoulders up. He was in a situation on a trip with family, reunion kind of situation. The adults had gone out to party. He said, I'll babysit the nephews because drinking messes up my misophonia. And he was in the room with the nephews and they were sniffing. So it was sniff, relax, sniff, relax, sniff, relax. And so he's constantly relaxing. So he thought, I'm just going to relax. Might as well just relax because that's what I'm doing all the time anyway. When the other adults came home, he was no longer triggering to his nephew's sniffing. And he selectively went through his triggers and one by one relaxed his shoulders, heard the triggers, and his autonomic nervous system changed. And this is consistent with Pavlovian conditioned reflexes. So that was a great thing to relax before the trigger. In some cases, you can block the reflex. If, for example, you have an esophagus constriction, you can swallow because that's an overriding reflex. You can also, to block a reflex, if you have a gasp reflex, then if you're breathing long, slow breaths will prevent you from locking up your windpipe and gasping for breath and jerking those chest muscles. They're still going to jerk on you, but it'll be a smaller jerk than real life, and it'll start to allow that reflex to decline. There's the neural repatterning technique, or the trigger tamer process. And most people with that, you have a very small recorded trigger so that there's no emotion, and you have the physical reflex tapers off, and then the emotions are much smaller or don't happen. And then another thing I have here, this common response, no threat, thank you. And the thank you is actually a trigger. If you talk to your lizard brain, This is saying, lizard brain, what you just heard was not a threat on my life. There's no danger here, but thank you for trying to protect me. Shortened down to is no threat, thank you, or no threat, thank you. And that thank you triggers a very pleasant physiological response in the body, something you've always been paired by your lizard brain with very good situations. And so that's another way you can do as a calming response. But the key with this, one of the keys of knowing that it's a physical reflex is you want to try to relax that physical reflex muscle and get it relaxed as quickly as you can, because the more that you're angry and those muscles are tight and you're pulling on those muscles and you're hearing those triggers, the stronger your lizard brain becomes at zapping those muscles, which are your initial physical reflex. So thank you for joining this webinar, Misophonia as a two-step response to triggers. I'm Tom Dozier with the Misophonia Treatment Institute. We have exciting things coming in the future with some treatments for misophonia that we're working on. I'm trying to move forward with some other research and some articles to publish and get the information out about misophonia and how this two-step process works with misophonia, because having a correct understanding of what's happening with misophonia will allow talented people who know more than I do about how to affect these reflexes and these responses. It allowed them to participate and be involved. So thank you very much. At this time, I'm going to say, I've got another note here. I think my reflex is a butterfly sensation in my chest or solar plexus. Okay. So probably progressive muscle relaxation wouldn't address that. But that feeling is probably an internal muscle, Deborah. It's still something in there that's activating, that you're feeling. In your case, you're right. The progressive muscle relaxation wouldn't work. The trigger tamer might, and the treatment that we're working on right now to train new therapists on could be a very, very possible reflex. So again, thank you so much. I'm going to stick around and answer any questions.